Greetings. Thank you for tuning in for another video. Trust that you're glad to see me, as I'm glad to see you. Now, I apologize for the delay for those of you who may have been missing me. As you have seen, I haven't uploaded in about a month or so, and it's not because I've neglected to do so, simply because I've been busy with other projects. And I hope that very soon you'll be able to appreciate the things that I've been working on since the last upload. So anyways, without further ado, I wanted to talk about a very important and meaningful topic, but one that I think is, again, like a lot of the ones I mentioned on this not podcast, YouTube channel, underrated. All right, so I wanted to talk about civil discourse, the importance of civil discourse, and the phenomenon of being surrounded by people or being in the presence of others and yet feeling alone, feeling isolated, or feeling alien to those who you're surrounded by. So one of the things that, or one of the insights that I guess I've begun to develop and explore over the past half year or so was the one about conflict, the one about war, the one about strife. And basically, I've come to this conclusion, or this fundamental belief, that there is a reality of nature. That is, everything, it seems like everything, especially living things, all things struggle. All things are suspended in a constant state of conflict. And this ought to be pretty self-evident and self-explanatory, but if it isn't, let me give an example. Like I said, I mentioned living organisms, right? So with living organisms, it seems like there's two major struggles. There's the struggle against the environment, right? The struggle to simply survive and exist against the whims of the physical environment itself, right? And this could be observed from anything as small as an ant to an elephant, right? And then there's also the struggle against others inside the environment. So like competition between species, for example. All right. So if you took a human being, stripped him or her down butt naked, threw him out in the woods, they would have two main struggles: a struggle against nature or the environment, and then a struggle against stuff that might want to eat them. Basically, that was a grand oversimplification. But anyways, I say all this to say conflict is inevitable. Okay. So that's the key insight here. If conflict is inevitable, if it is just a consequence of existing, what does that mean? Like, really, what does that mean? Like, obviously, we live, it seems like, those of us who live in first world countries, it seems like we live relatively peaceful lives. We live relatively stable lives, extremely luxurious, comfortable, convenient lives, right? And you could almost argue that we live in a perpetual state of peace. Now, there's also the looming risk or threat of conflict, right? But overall, we live in, it seems like, a state of peace. But as I've already elaborated on, that's not the state of nature. And so, sort of contrasting or making this observation of this dichotomy, right, between the state of nature and then this artificial construction, which we have, this peaceful paradigm, this peaceful existence that we live, I am inclined to ask, what makes both? And we already know that one is inevitable, one is just a consequence of nature, but this one, peace. And I really want to focus in on peace between people. Now, you may remember at the beginning of this video, I mentioned the phenomenon of feeling alien to others, even when you're in the presence of them. And what I meant by that is, it seems like a lot of people, I don't know, maybe a lot of people don't get this. At least it seems that way. Maybe I'm being a bit presumptuous, but it seems that a lot of people don't understand that being alone doesn't necessarily mean that you're isolated physically from other people. You could still be in the presence of others and be alone, right? And why is that? The reason why is because you don't relate to others. So for example, it's kind of like if you walk into a room, let's say that you are a musician and you're only a musician, right? And you don't know anything other than music. You walk into a room full of athletes who are athletes and they're only athletes and they don't know anything but athletics and sports. If you walk into that room, chances are that you're not going to feel as you won't feel as capable of relating to those people as you would if they were, say, a room full of musicians. And I know it's a very simple example, but I use it to illustrate we kind of think inherently, we live in a world, a society, a civilization, in which we're like, we are convinced of our differences, that our differences fundamentally make us unrelatable to each other. Like we think because we're a certain color, or because we're a certain nationality, or because we have a certain cultural origin, or a certain creed or religion, or what have you, because we have all of these differences, which are a lot of times might as well be considered arbitrary. I know for some practical purposes that doesn't necessarily follow, right? But in light of what makes us the same, our solidarity, our humanity, we are fundamentally the same. And it is a belief that regardless of a characteristic, regardless of a belief, regardless of an ideology or whatever, it's what matters most with regards to maintaining peace is knowing that we can relate to each other. But it is only when we convince ourselves that we can't relate to each other that we devolve into a state of nature in which we're competing with each other to the point of brutal, violent conflict and war. And so really the conclusion of everything that I've said up until this point is that there really are only two alternatives. There's either war or civil discourse. And in the absence of civil discourse, the threat of war and violence and conflict will ensue. It's only inevitable. What I see in the world today, when I observe politics, and even when I observe history, when I observe the commercial and economic sector, when I observe different proponents of philosophies and ideologies, I see so many people who think that they are fundamentally different. They think that they are superior, or they think that others are inferior to them on the basis of such characteristics and objects of belief. But they are deceiving themselves. They truly are deceiving themselves. And don't get me wrong, conflicts are real. I know that conflicts of interest are real, right? People fight for literally any reason. It could be anything from land, resources, money, materials, basic ideas. It could be arguing about sports or music or anything. Literally, people just argue about anything. And this is on a macro as well as a micro scale, right? But let me tell you something. I believe that any problem between human beings can be solved with honesty and civil discourse. That's all it takes. But the thing is it's a collective action problem. So like any collective action problem, the problem itself is rendered impossible to solve if collectively those involved aren't willing to come to some common ground, right? And the common ground, in my opinion, is agreeing on this one thing, that fundamentally we are all the same because we are all human. And, you don't have to believe like I believe. You don't have to look how I look. You don't have to live like I live. But at the very least, can we at least inspire each other to treat each other with enough respect and enough dignity so that we can preserve harmony and balance among ourselves, so that we can ensure that the people who follow after us will have not only a physical world, but a cultural world to inherit, that one that is healthy and one that does not necessarily oppress or seek to oppress or subjugate or prop up one people or peoples at the expense of putting another down. Can we do that? Short answer, no, I don't think we can. Short answer, no, I don't think we can. One of the things that I've observed, just not only from personal experience, but also just through learning about history, it just seems like we will always find a reason to hate each other. And it sucks, but that's the truth. It seems like human beings will always find a reason to hate each other. And so I guess the conclusion of this video is that, well, while we have the potential to do great things, we also have the potential to do awful things. And it's just a part of being human. So thank you for watching my overview of conflict, of alienation and relatability and loneliness. All these different ideas that were just like blah, 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 just a blob of mess coming out of my mouth, unorganized mess. So anyways, thank you. If you have any questions, critiques, comments, opinions, etc., please leave them in the comment section below, and I'd love to hear what you have to say, what you think about this. So anyways, bye-bye. See you next time. Take care.